The morning sun was already burning off the last of the dew, promising another long, hot day. On the sprawling army post, the air hummed with the sound of buses and shouted orders. This was reception, the very first stop for every new person who had just signed their life away to the army. And for the last 6 years, this piece of pavement was owned by one man, the drill sergeant. He stood like a statue made of anger and worn boots, watching the latest batch of civilians stumble off the bus. Their faces were a mix of confusion, fear, and tiredness. To him, they were not people yet. They were a problem to be fixed, soft clay to be pounded into a hard shape. His voice, when he finally used it, didn't seem to come from his mouth, but from the ground itself. A low growl that made everyone freeze. From this second, he boomed, starting the slow, terrifying walk down the line. Your old life is gone. Your mommy isn't here to wipe your nose. Your opinions are worthless. Your feelings are a weakness. You belong to me. He loved this part. He lived for it. Seeing the eyes go wide, seeing the shoulders tense up. It was how you broke them down, so you could start building a soldier. His gaze swept over them, looking for the one who would be his example today. And he found her. She was standing about halfway down the line. A woman, older than the rest, maybe in her late 40s. While everyone else was staring straight ahead, trying to be invisible, her eyes were moving. They were calmly looking at the buildings, the other drill sergeants, even him. There was no fear in them, just observation, a quiet curiosity. It felt like she was studying him, and that made a hot spark of irritation flare in his chest. Who did she think she was? He changed his course and walked straight towards her, his boots hitting the pavement like hammer strikes. The recruits on either side of her held their breath. He stopped so close he could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. She didn't flinch. She just turned her head and looked at him, waiting. You find something interesting? He snarled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper just for her. You think this is a tourist attraction? What's your problem? She opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off. I didn't ask you to talk. He roared, his voice exploding again, so the whole group jumped. Your face is saying enough. It's saying you think you're better than this. It's saying you don't think the rules apply to you. He took a half step back, addressing everyone, but still glaring at her. We get one every cycle. Someone who thinks they're special. Someone who thinks they've seen it all before. They are always, the first to quit. He turned his full attention back to her. Her expression hadn't changed. That calm look was still there, which made him even angrier. You're old enough to be the mother of most of these kids, he said, the words meant to sting. You think that earns you respect here? It earns you nothing. It just means you're slower. You're weaker. You are a liability to the person who will have to stand next to you. So tell me, ma'am, why are you here? What could you possibly think you have to offer? This time he paused, actually letting her answer. A small part of his brain, the part that wasn't riding the wave of performance, noticed her clothes. They were simple, plain a t-shirt and casual pants. Not the kind of thing a new recruit usually wore on their first day. But he was too far into his routine now. She spoke, and her voice was soft, steady, and clear. It wasn't loud, but it carried. I'm here for the orientation briefing, Sergeant. My next of kin is listed as my sons. All 4 of them. He barked out a laugh, a harsh, short sound. Your sons? Wonderful. Maybe they can come teach you how to stand at attention when a superior is speaking to you. Maybe they can. He was on a roll, ready to really make an example of her, to have her doing push-ups until that calm look melted into exhaustion. But a movement from the corner of his eye stopped him. One of the staff sergeants from the orderly room was half jogging across the pavement towards him, his face pale. The staff sergeant looked at the woman, then at the drill sergeant with wide, urgent eyes. The drill sergeant held up a finger to the woman. A silent "you wait right there," and turned to his subordinate. "What is it?" he hissed, annoyed at the interruption. The staff sergeant leaned in, whispering frantically into his ear. The words were quiet, but they hit the drill sergeant like physical blows. "She's not a recruit. She's the civilian consultant from the Pentagon. Cyber intelligence. Here for the command briefing. Her driver got lost. She walked to the wrong formation." With each whispered phrase, the drill sergeant felt the blood drain from his face. The heat of the sun suddenly felt cold. He looked back at the woman, who was still watching impatiently. The staff sergeant saved the worst, the most terrifying part, for last. And Sergeant, her next of kin, her sons, we checked it. It's real. 4 of them. All Navy SEALs. And all 4 are colonels. For the first time in 6 years, on his own pavement, in front of a formation of new recruits, the drill sergeant was completely, utterly silent. The performance was over. The only sound was the distant hum of the post and the frantic beating of his own heart. He had not just picked the wrong recruit. He had picked a storm. The walk from the battalion commander's office to the training grounds was the longest 100 yards of the drill sergeant's life. The 4 brothers fell into step around him, not like a guard detail, but naturally, easily. They moved with a quiet synchronicity that was unnerving. He could feel their presence at his shoulders without even looking. The midday sun beat down on the dusty field where a new platoon was struggling through basic drill. The sharp cries of other drill sergeants cut through the air. This was his kingdom, his stage. But today, he felt like a stranger on it. "This is our primary drill pad," he heard himself say, his voice sounding too loud, too formal. "Here we instill discipline and immediate response to command." The brothers nodded slowly, their eyes sweeping over the scene. They didn't speak. Their silence was a question he felt compelled to fill. He led them to the bayonet assault course, where recruits were screaming and lunging at dummy torsos with training rifles. "Building aggression and fighting spirit," the drill sergeant explained, falling back into the familiar script. "You have to break the civilian reluctance to engage." The oldest brother, the one who had spoken first, rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Interesting," he said, his tone mild. "We focus a lot on breath control and economy of motion in close quarters. Maximum effect, minimum wasted energy. Screaming can drain oxygen, affect precision." He said it like he was commenting on the weather, not criticizing. The drill sergeant felt a flush creep up his neck. They moved on. At the grenade pit, a young recruit was frozen with fear, a fake grenade clutched in his sweating hand. His drill sergeant was in his face, screaming, turning the air blue with insults about cowardice. The drill sergeant leading the tour opened his mouth to explain the necessity of stress inoculation. But one of the other brothers, a man with sharp, observant eyes, spoke first, his voice quiet, almost to himself. "High stress floods the prefrontal cortex. The thinking brain shuts down. All you get is panic or paralysis." He tilted his head, watching the trembling recruit. "You have to train the muscle memory first, under low stress. Then slowly add pressure. Otherwise, you're not building a soldier. You're just breaking a person." The words landed with a quiet thud. The tour guide drill sergeant had no response. He just stood there, watching as the screaming drill sergeant finally snatched the training grenade and demonstrated the throw with furious, exaggerated movements. Next was the confidence climb, a towering 50-foot wooden structure. Recruits were harnessed, but terrified, inching their way up. One was stuck, frozen halfway, clinging to the logs. His drill sergeant was on the ground, yelling up at him about being a disappointment to his family, The youngest looking of the four brothers watched for a long moment. He had a kind of calm energy about him. He turned to the drill sergeant. "Mind if I take a closer look?" Before an answer could come, the brother walked over, not to the yelling drill sergeant, but to the base of the tower. He ignored the screamer completely. He looked up at the frozen recruit and called out, not a shout, but a clear, projected voice. "Recruit, look at me." The young man, pale-faced, looked down. "You're safe. The harness is good. I've checked it." The brother's voice was utterly assured, a flat statement of fact. "Your hands are on the wood. Your feet are on the wood. All you have to do is move one hand. Just the right hand. Find the next hold. Don't think about the top. Just find the next piece of wood for your hand." There was a pause. The recruit's knuckles were white. Then slowly, the right hand uncurled and crept upward, finding a grip. "Good," the brother said, the same calm tone. "Now the right foot. Just a little up. Find a spot." Like magic, under this quiet, specific instruction, the recruit began to move again. In minutes, he was at the top. The yelling drill sergeant on the ground was silent, looking confused. The brother walked back to the group. The oldest brother gave a slight, approving nod. The tour guide drill sergeant felt something inside him shrink. He had seen that same recruit frozen a dozen times before. The solution was always more yelling, more threats. He had never, not once, considered just talking them through it. The tour continued, but it had shifted. The drill sergeant was no longer leading. He was just walking alongside a silent, devastating audit. When they passed the running track, a brother would muse about heart rate zones and sustainable pacing versus punishment runs. When they saw recruits doing endless push-ups in the mud, another would quietly mention the risk of rhabdomyolysis and training injuries that sidelined soldiers for weeks. They weren't showing off. They weren't even directly telling him he was wrong. They were simply viewing his entire world, the world he had built his identity on, through a different lens. A lens of efficiency, of psychology, of building a person up rather than tearing them down. Their critique was in the quiet gaps between their words, in the things they noticed that he never had. Finally, they arrived back at the start, near the obstacle course. The drill sergeant was exhausted, not physically, but in his soul. His certainty was gone, replaced by a hollow, sinking feeling. The oldest brother turned to him. The polite, distant smile was still there. "Thank you, Sergeant. It's been very educational. You have a difficult job. Turning civilians into soldiers in weeks is a hard task." It sounded like the preamble to a compliment. The drill sergeant braced himself. "Our mother," the brother continued, "she had a hard job too, raising 4 boys alone. She couldn't afford to break us down. She had to build us up, every day, with patience, with clear expectations." He looked around the dusty, noisy post. Different kind of basic training, I guess. He let that sit in the hot air. The message was clear. This woman he had tried to humiliate had succeeded where he was, right now, feeling like a failure. She had built 4 of the most formidable warriors on the planet, not with screaming and punishment, but with something else entirely. Something he had never valued. "We won't take up any more of your time," the brother said. The 4 of them nodded to him, a gesture that was almost respectful, and yet felt like the closing of a verdict. They turned and walked away, back toward headquarters, moving once again in that quiet, unified way. The drill sergeant stood alone in the middle of his field. All around him, a machine of basic training churned on the screens, the insults, the raw noise of it. But for him, the sound had gone out of it. It all just seemed like chaos now. He looked at his hands, as if seeing them for the first time. They were the hands of a man who knew how to break things. He was suddenly, terribly afraid he had forgotten how to build anything at all. For the rest of the week, the drill sergeant moved through his duties like a man in a dream. The words of the four brothers played on a loop in his head. Asterisk, different kind of basic training. Maximum effect. Minimum wasted energy. You're just breaking a person. Asterisk, he watched his fellow drill sergeants perform the same routines he had always performed. The explosive anger, the personal insults, the exhausting punishment for the smallest mistake. He had always believed this was the only way. The necessary fire to burn away the soft civilian parts. Now he saw something else. He saw the flinching, confused eyes of a young recruit who was being called worthless for dropping a water bottle. He saw the panic, not the learning, in the face of a recruit being screamed at to assemble a rifle. The machine was running, but was it actually building anything? The doubt ate at him. He tried to go back to normal. He raised his voice at a young man who kept fumbling during marching drills. What is wrong with you? Are your feet just for decoration? The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The recruit's face, instead of hardening with resolve, just crumpled into shame. The drill sergeant stopped mid-sentence. He looked at the boy, really looked at him. He was just a kid, tired and scared. Stop, the drill sergeant said, his voice lower. The whole formation looked at him, surprised by the change in tone. He walked up to the fumbling recruit. You're thinking about your arms and your legs at the same time. That's too much. Forget your arms. Just look straight ahead and listen to my cadence. Just make your feet hit the ground on the beat. Nothing else. He started calling the cadence again, slow and steady. The recruit, focusing only on his feet, began to fall into step. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. The drill sergeant felt a tiny, unexpected flicker of something. It wasn't the cold satisfaction of dominance. It was warmer. It felt like accomplishment. The next test came at the obstacle course. A recruit, a bigger fellow with surprising strength but no coordination, was stuck on the rope climb. He had muscle, but he was just hauling himself up in a frantic, exhausting struggle, burning out halfway. The drill sergeant watching him felt the old script rise up, scream at him about being weak, make him do push-ups until he puked for failing. Instead, he heard the quiet voice of the brother in his memory. Asterisk, economy of motion. Asterisk, he walked over. The recruit, dripping with sweat and shame, braced for the yelling. Look at me, the drill sergeant said, not softly, but with a firm command. The recruit met his eyes. You're using all your strength and getting nowhere. You're wasting it. He pointed at the rope. It's not a pull-up. It's a step. Use your legs. Wrap the rope around your foot, like this. He demonstrated on a lower rope. Push up with your legs, then move your hands. Legs push, hands move. One at a time. Try it. The recruit, confused by the lack of screaming, tried to follow the instructions. It was clumsy. He fell twice. But the third time, he got the rhythm. Legs push, hands move. He made it 3/4 of the way up before slipping. But when he dropped down, he wasn't deflated. He was panting, but his eyes were bright. I almost had it, Sergeant. I felt it. The drill sergeant gave a single, sharp nod. Again, and this time, get to the top. The recruit attacked the rope with new understanding. And he made it. A ragged cheer went up from the others watching. The drill sergeant turned away, a strange tightness in his chest. That cheer, that small victory, felt more powerful than any fear he had ever instilled. The real turning point happened a few days later. It was during a brutal, long run. A recruit, one of the smaller ones, fell out, staggering to the side and vomiting. The drill sergeant running the exercise, a man known for his mercilessness, zeroed in. Get up. You're not tired, you're weak. Your body is lying to you. Move, or you'll be running all night. The recruit was crying, gasping, trying to stand, but failing. The tour guide drill sergeant saw it, the pale face, the uncoordinated movements. This wasn't quitting. This was heat exhaustion. He broke from his position and jogged over. His fellow drill sergeant glared at him. He's mine to handle. Get back in line. The tour guide drill sergeant ignored him. He knelt down. Look at me. Can you tell me your name? The recruit, through heaving breaths, stammered it out. Okay, you're done running. You're in the shade now. He looked at two other recruits. You too. Get him to the aid station. Now. Walk him. Don't let him collapse. He turned to the furious drill sergeant. He's got heat, Cat. This isn't discipline. It's a medical emergency. The rest of the run was completed in a tense silence. Later, in the drill sergeant's office, the other man confronted him, red-faced. What was that? You went soft in front of the whole platoon. You undermined me. We can't coddle them. The words that came out of his mouth surprised even him. We're not here to coddle them, but we're not here to kill them either. Our job is to make them soldiers. You can't be a soldier from a hospital bed, or if you're broken in spirit, before you even get to a real unit. He thought of the four brothers, of their quiet, unbreakable strength. There's a difference between being hard and being smart. I think I've been confusing the two for a long time. He wasn't trying to be wise. He was just saying what he now believed to be true. The other drill sergeant just scoffed and walked away, but the argument was over. Slowly, the changes became his new normal. He still yelled. His voice could still crack like a whip when safety was on the line or when he needed immediate attention. But the insults, the personal attacks, the cruelty for its own sake, those vanished. He started explaining the why behind the pain. We do push-ups not to hurt you, but to build the muscle that will carry your buddy's gear. He started praising the effort, not just punishing the failure. That weapon assembly was slow, but you did it right. Now let's get you fast. The recruits noticed. They didn't relax. They worked harder. They started asking questions instead of just hiding their confusion. The platoon's performance, which had been average, began to steadily improve. They worked as a team because they weren't terrified of each other's mistakes, bringing down collective wrath. One evening, the battalion commander called him in. The drill sergeant stood at attention, wondering if this was about his new methods, if he was about to be told to get back in line. The commander looked at him for a long moment, then glanced down at a report. Your platoon's scores from the last evaluation cycle, he said. Top marks in weapon safety. Best improvement in physical fitness. Lowest attrition rate due to injury or drops. He looked up. What are you doing differently, Sergeant? The drill sergeant stood straight. Just trying to build soldiers, sir. Not just break civilians. The commander leaned back, a faint, knowing look in his eye. He had heard about the visit, of course. He gave a slow nod. Well, keep building them, then. Dismissed. Walking back to the barracks that night, the drill sergeant felt a peace he hadn't known in years. The ghost of his mistake, the four quiet brothers, their incredible mother, they weren't haunting him anymore. They had, without ever raising a voice at him, given him a gift. They had shown him a better way. He wasn't Iron Ed anymore. The recruits had started calling him the Sarge, and for the first time, he felt like he had earned the title. The change in the drill sergeant wasn't a sudden flashy thing. It was slow, like a deep river changing its course over time. The post moved through its cycles, new faces arriving every month, full of that same fear and confusion he knew so well. But the man who greeted them was different. He still stood tall. His voice could still stop a crowd dead in its tracks. But the first words out of his mouth to a new formation were no longer about their worthlessness. They were clear, direct, and strangely fair. "You are here because you chose to be," he would say, his eyes scanning their young faces. "My job is not to tell you that you are nothing. My job is to take the potential you have and turn it into skill. The discipline we build here will save your life and the life of the person next to you. Pay attention. Work together, and you will get through this." Some of the other drill sergeants shook their heads. They called him soft behind his back. They said he was ruining the system. But they couldn't argue with the results. His platoons graduated with higher score, fewer injuries, and a sense of tight-knit trust that others lacked. They weren't just scared of failing. They were determined to succeed, for themselves and for him. One afternoon, a letter arrived at the battalion headquarters. It was a simple, handwritten note on good paper, addressed to the command. The battalion commander read it, and then called the drill sergeant in. "Something for you," the commander said, sliding the note across the desk. "From your visiting dignitary." The drill sergeant's heart gave a hard thump. He picked up the note. The handwriting was elegant and steady. Asterisk, to the men and women of the reception battalion. Asterisk, asterisk. Thank you for your hospitality during my recent visit. I was impressed by the dedication I saw on post. The work you do is vital to our nation's security. Please convey my special thanks to the drill sergeant, who so thoroughly demonstrated the base's security protocols upon my arrival. His commitment to his duty was unmistakable. Asterisk, asterisk, with respect. Asterisk, it was signed with her name. There was no mention of the screaming, the humiliation, or her 4 sons. It was a note of pure, graceful class. She had taken the worst moment of his professional life and in a few lines reframed it as a sign of his dedication. He wasn't being mocked. He was being forgiven in the most profound way possible by someone choosing to see the intent, not just the terrible mistake. He held the note for a long time. "She didn't have to do this," he finally said, his voice rough. The commander nodded. "No, she didn't. Remember that. Dismissed." The note, he kept it. He didn't frame it or show it off. He folded it neatly and put it in the small personal locker in his office. It was a private reminder. A reminder of the cost of arrogance and the power of grace. Years began to turn. New recruits became soldiers and shipped out to units around the world. Every now and then he would get a message. A former recruit, now a corporal serving overseas, would send a letter to the battalion, asking if someone could pass a note to the Sarge. The notes were simple. Asterisk, you are right. The discipline stuck. Or, asterisk, that thing you said about looking out for your buddy's gear saved my team when our truck broke down. Once, a young staff sergeant visited the post and sought him out just to shake his hand. "You were the only one who didn't call me an idiot when I couldn't get it right," the man said. "You just made me do it until I could." I never forgot that. These were his medals now. Not ribbons on his chest, but these quiet moments of connection. He was building something that lasted. One crisp autumn morning, during a major training exercise, a group of high-ranking visitors from different military branches toured the post. Among them were several Navy officers. The drill sergeant, now a senior instructor, was leading a demonstration on a new training technique that focused on communication under stress. As he finished explaining, he noticed a small group of visitors lingering. 4 men, older now, their hair tinged with gray, standing with that same familiar, relaxed stillness. They wore the uniforms of Navy captains. They had been promoted. They watched him. He met their gaze and gave a single respectful nod from across the field. The oldest brother, the one who had done most of the talking that long ago day, returned the nod. There was no smile this time. It was something better. It was a look of recognition. A look that said, asterisk, we see you. You learned. Asterisk, they turned and moved on with their group, never approaching, never saying a word. None of the young recruits running the drills had any idea of the history that had just passed silently between those men. But for the drill sergeant, it felt like a circle closing. The judgment was over. The lesson had been learned and acknowledged. That evening, as the sun set over the training grounds, he took a long walk. He could hear the distant sounds of a new platoon getting their gear squared away, the muffled shouts of other drill sergeants, the timeless sounds of the post. He thought about the scared, angry man he had been, who believed that breaking people down was the only way to find their strength. He had been so wrong. True strength wasn't forged in blind fear. It was built in the mind first. It was built by understanding the why, by trusting the person next to you, by believing that you could be more than you were. You couldn't scream that into someone. You had to guide them to it. He never told the story of that one terrible morning to his recruits. It wasn't a legend he wanted passed around. It was his private truth. But the legacy of that day, of that wrong woman and her 4 sons, lived on in every soldier he trained with patience instead of rage, with clarity instead of cruelty. He was just the Sarge now, a builder of soldiers. And finally, after all this time, he was at peace with the man he had become. The journey had started with the worst mistake of his life, and it had led him, step by step, to becoming the leader he was always meant to be.